The taste of Fenrir Vale was the first thing to return a metallic coppery grit that coated the tongue like dried blood and static electricity. Leo coughed the sound, scraping against his raw throat. His vision swam in a kaleidoscope of bruised purples and charcoal grays. He was not in a cockpit. He was not in the comfortable pressurized silence of a pilot's seat. He was on his knees in dirt that smelled of ozone and ancient decay. He tried to raise his hands to wipe the dust from his eyes, but his wrists jerked to a halt. Magnetic cuffs. The hum of the field lock vibrated through his bones, a low-frequency buzz that made his teeth ache. Then came the sound. It was not a noise. It was a physical wall of pressure. A roar. It started low like the grinding of tectonic plates and rose into a deafening crescendo that rattled the fillings in his teeth. It was the sound of 1,000 throats screaming in unison, layered over a high-pitched whining frequency that drilled directly into his auditory cortex. The howl wave. Leo squeezed his eyes shut, trying to calibrate his internal gyroscope. He had crashed. No, that was not right. He had been shot down. He remembered the alarms, the screaming of the hull as atmospheric entry tore at the thermal shields, and then the sickening lurch of the ejection pod failing to stabilize. He opened his eyes. The blur resolved into terrifying clarity. He was in the center of a crater. Not a natural one, but an architectural depression carved out of obsidian stone. The walls rose high-tiered, like an amphitheater, and packed onto every ledge and precipice were the Luperin. They were massive. Even from down here in the pit of the arena, Leo could see the sheer scale of them. 7, maybe 8 feet tall on average, covered in thick, matted fur, ranging from slate gray to void black. They were humanoid, but their posture was hunched with predatory latent energy. Their snouts were elongated, filled with teeth, designed to tear, not chew. They were screaming for him. Silence! The voice did not come from a microphone, but it carried with the weight of thunder. The crowd noise severed instantly, leaving only the whistling wind and the persistent headache-inducing whine of the planetary interference. On a raised dais, carved from a single piece of white bone, an elder stood. His fur was white with age, and he wore robes made of woven metal mesh. This was Elder Orin. Leo did not know his name yet, but he felt the weight of the old wolf's gaze. The sky bleeds, Orin announced, his voice raspy, but projecting clearly to the nosebleed seats. And it vomits forth a curse. Leo shifted his weight, testing the magnetic cuffs. They were old tech, likely scavenged, but the power cell was fully charged. He was not breaking out of these with brute force. He looked around. The floor of the arena, the blood circle, was stained dark in concentric rings. It did not take a genius to figure out what provided the pigment. A heavy gate at the far end of the circle, ground open. The sound of stone on stone echoed like a gunshot. From the darkness of the tunnel, a figure emerged. If the crowd had been loud before their silence, now was absolute. The figure walked with a heavy, rhythmic thud that Leo could feel through the soles of his boots. She was taller than the others, broad-shouldered and encased in armor that looked like it had been forged from the hull of a dreadnought. Her fur was a piercing, icy silver, contrasting with the dark scars that ran across her muzzle and down her left arm. She did not look at the crowd. She looked only at Leo. Her eyes were amber, glowing with a bioluminescence that was common among the species on this side of the rift. There was no hatred in them. That would have been manageable. Hatred was a human emotion. It was hot and messy. What Leo saw in her eyes was a cold, professional indifference. He was not a person to her. He was a piece of debris to be cleared. This was Beatrice, the champion. The judgment is cast, Elder Orin intoned, raising a hand. The skyfall brings the howl sickness. It brings the static that blinds our minds. The falling omen must be silenced, so the veil may breathe. Leo swallowed hard. Hey, he croaked, his voice, sounding pathetic in the vast, acoustic space. "I didn't ask to land here. My nav computer was scrambled by your silence meat." A guard near the wall snarled, slamming the butt of a spear into the ground. Beatrice stopped 10 feet from him. Up close, the smell of her was overwhelming wet, fur-hot iron, and something electric like a thunderstorm about to break. She looked down at him, her lip curling slightly to reveal canines the size of his fingers. "You are small," she said. Her common was accented guttural, dragging on the vowels. "You will break easily." "I'm tougher than I look," Leo said, forcing a grin. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "I eat plenty of calcium." She did not blink. She reached to her belt and unhooked a weapon. It was not a gun or a sword. It was a curved, serrated dagger, made from a single polished fang. It was easily 18 inches long. The Oath Fang. The crowd began a low, rhythmic stomping. Thud, thud, thud. "The circle demands a cleansing," Orin shouted. "Cast the fang, claim the kill. Let the blood ground the static." Beatrice flipped the dagger in her hand. She held it by the blade, preparing to throw. This was not a combat stance. It was an execution. She intended to bury that fang in his chest from 10 feet away. Leo's mind raced. He was a pilot. He flew ships through asteroid fields at 0.5 light speed. His world was measured in milliseconds and micro-adjustments. He watched the muscles in her shoulder bunch. He saw the shift in her stance, the planting of the rear foot. He knew the trajectory before she released it. Time seemed to distill into a thick, syrupy crawl. Beatrice's arm snapped forward. The white bone blurred. Leo did not flinch away. He moved into it. His hands were cuffed together, but his gloves, standard-issue pilot gear, were equipped with micro-grip friction pads designed to hold onto controls during high-G maneuvers. He threw his hands up, not to block, but to intercept. Snap. The sound was sharp like a dry branch breaking. The dagger stopped. Leo gasped, the impact jarring his shoulders, but he held it. His gloved hands were clamped around the hilt of the Oath Fang, the blade hovering 2 inches from his left eye. He had caught it out of the air. For 3 seconds, the entire world died. No wind, no stomping, no breathing. Beatrice stood frozen, her arm still extended in the follow-through of the throw. Her amber eyes widened, the indifference shattering into shock. Leo lowered the dagger slowly, his breathing jagged. He held it up, the white bone gleaming under the pale sun of Fenrir Vale. "I think you dropped this," he said, breathless. A murmur rippled through the stands, growing rapidly into a roar of confusion. Elder Orin leaned over the railing of his dais, his knuckles white on the bone balustrade. "He holds the fang," Orin whispered, but the acoustics carried it everywhere. Beatrice growled a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. She took a step forward, her hand reaching for the sword on her back. "Give it to me, Sky Trash. I will finish this with my bare hands." "Halt!" Orin's voice cracked like a whip. "Halt, champion!" Beatrice froze, her ears flattening against her skull. "He is an Omen Elder. Let me kill him." "He holds the Oath Fang," Orin declared, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. "He caught the judgment. The law of the first pack is clear. If the victim catches the fang, the thrower does not own their death." The Elder looked down at Beatrice, his expression grave. "The thrower owns their life," Beatrice recoiled, as if she had been slapped. "No." "Shield-bound," the crowd began to chant. It started as a whisper and grew. "Shield-bound, shield-bound." "You threw the fang to end him," Orin said. "He caught it. By the blood of the ancestors, he is now under your shield. His life is your life. His blood is your blood. If he dies, you are forsaken." Leo blinked, looking from the dagger in his hand to the giant wolf woman who looked ready to vomit with rage. "Wait," Leo said. "Does that mean you can't kill me?" Beatrice marched over to him. She towered over his kneeling form, blocking out the sun. She snatched the dagger from his hands, with enough force to nearly dislocate his thumbs, then severed the magnetic field of his cuffs with a swipe of a clawed thumb over the sensor. The cuffs clattered to the dust. Leo rubbed his wrists, looking up at her. He saw the humiliation burning in her face. She was the champion, the strongest warrior of the Luporan, and she had just been magically bound to a scrawny human pilot because of a reflex catch. Suddenly, the air pressure dropped. The high-pitched whine in Leo's head spiked to a screaming crescendo. "Wave incoming!" someone screamed from the stands. The sky above them, previously a dull gray, ripped open. Ribbons of black light, the dark aurora cascaded down like spilling ink. The howl wave. It hit the arena floor with a physical force. Every Luporan in the stands grabbed their heads, howling in pain. It was a neural feedback loop, a biological radio jamming signal that fried the nervous system. Leo gritted his teeth, expecting the migraine, but something else happened. The palm of his right hand, where he had gripped the oath fang, began to burn. It wasn't heat, it was cold fire. He looked down and gasped. Intricate, glowing blue lines were etching themselves into his skin, moving from his palm, up his wrist, and disappearing under his flight suit sleeve. It felt like someone was writing on his bones with a laser. "Ah!" Leo cried out, clutching his hand. Beatrice was on one knee, panting, resisting the wave better than the others. She looked at his hand and her eyes narrowed. She saw the glowing mark, the howl mark. The wave passed as quickly as it had come, leaving the air smelling of ozone and wet dog. The silence returned, but it was heavy now, dangerous. Beatrice stood up, shaking her head to clear the static. She grabbed Leo by the collar of his flight suit and hauled him to his feet. He dangled there, his toes barely scraping the dirt. "Listen to me, little omen," she hissed, her face inches from his. "You are shield-bound to me now. That means I cannot kill you. But do not mistake that for safety. If you speak, I will break your jaw. If you run, I will break your legs. You are baggage. Nothing more." Leo looked at the terrifying set of teeth inches from his nose. His heart was still doing gymnastics, but the adrenaline was making him giddy. A defense mechanism. When terrified, crack a joke. He forced a lopsided smile. "Relax, big girl. I won't bite." Beatrice's snout wrinkled in disgust. A low, menacing growl rumbled from her throat, deep enough to vibrate Leo's ribcage. "Human jokes smell like fear," she said. She dropped him. Leo stumbled, but kept his footing. "The judgment is sealed," Elder Orin proclaimed, looking relieved that the execution hadn't happened, or perhaps terrified that it hadn't. "Beatrice of the Iron Fur has claimed the shield-bound. The falling omen is under her protection." From the VIP box, a section of the stands, shaded by a canopy of red silk, a figure applauded. The clapping was slow, rhythmic, and mocking. A male Luporan descended the stairs into the arena. He was leaner than Beatrice, but moved with a fluid, lethal grace. His fur was a sleek, well-groomed russet, and he wore a sash of blue velvet over his armor. This was Harker. "Beautiful," Harker said, his voice smooth, like oiled gravel. He walked up to Beatrice, ignoring Leo entirely at first. "Truly, Beatrice, you never cease to entertain. A pet for the season." "Back off, Harker," Beatrice snapped, stepping between him and Leo. The movement was instinctive, the shield-bound pact forcing her body to protect him, even if her mind hated it. Harker smiled, revealing teeth that were filed to needle points. "I am merely congratulating you. To be bound to such fragile things. It shows your benevolence, or your declining aim." He finally turned his gaze to Leo. The amusement vanished from his eyes, replaced by a cold, calculating malice. He looked Leo up and down, noting the flight suit, the tech, the burning mark on his hand hidden behind his back. "Welcome to Fenrir Vale Human," Harker said. "I am Warlord Harker. You have stumbled into a very old, very sharp machine. Try not to get caught in the gears." "I'll keep that in mind," Leo said, straightening his jacket. "And you are the one who will likely be eulogizing you," Harker said softly. He turned back to Beatrice. "The council will expect a report on your new charge. Do not keep them waiting, and Beatrice, do try to keep him alive until the moon set. It would be a shame to violate the oath so soon." Harker turned and walked away, his laughter trailing behind him like smoke. "Move," Beatrice commanded, shoving Leo toward the exit tunnel. "Where are we going?" Leo asked, stumbling forward. "To my den, before someone decides to test the strength of my oath by putting a spear through your back." The walk through the city of the Luporan was a fever dream. The architecture was a mix of primitive stonework and scavenged high-tech scrap. Massive ribs of ancient creatures were used as archways, supporting roofs made of corrugated plasteel. But it was the living stones that caught Leo's eye. Tall, black monoliths pulsed with a faint rhythmic light, matching the frequency of the interference in his ears. They were amplifiers. They were part of the Howl Wave network. As they passed a construction site, Leo saw something that made him stop. The road was being repaired. Underneath the cracked cobblestones, a layer of bedrock had been exposed. But it wasn't rock. It was a smooth gray panel of composite alloy. Leo knelt down, pretending to tie his bootlace. He brushed his gloved hand over the exposed patch. He knew this texture. He knew this manufacturing stamp. It was partially corroded, but the honeycomb structure underneath was unmistakable. This was Class A hull plating, off-world tech. "What are you doing?" Beatrice barked, looming over him. "Just checking my boots," Leo lied, standing up quickly. "This planet, it's not just rocks and wolves, is it?" "It is a grave," Beatrice said. "Walk." Leo's mind was spinning. The Fenrir Veil system was listed in the star charts as a primitive non-contact zone, a protected reserve. But that metal plating was huge. It looked like the foundation of the entire city sector. Someone had built here. Someone with star-faring technology. And they had done it a long time ago. He checked his wrist comp. Dead. Static. The interference here was a perfect cage. He couldn't call for help. He couldn't triangulate his ship's crash site. He was blind deaf and leashed to a werewolf. As they rounded a corner into a narrower alley, a shadow detached itself from a pile of scrap metal. "Hey, wolf bait!" Leo turned. A human woman was crouching behind a rusted ventilation unit. She was covered in grease, her hair a chaotic nest of wires and dreadlocks. She wore a mechanic's jumpsuit that had been patched so many times, it was more patch than suit. "Ada," Leo whispered. He didn't know her, but seeing a human face was like seeing water in a desert. Beatrice growled, stepping forward, but Ada held up a wrench and a gesture of peace. "Easy, Fido. Just delivering a welcome gift," Ada said. Her voice was raspy, like she had smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day since kindergarten. She tossed a small object through the air. Leo caught it. It was a coil of copper wire wrapped around a small, jagged crystal. "What is this?" Leo asked. "A ground," Ada said, glancing nervously at the rooftops. "The Howl Wave will cook your soft human brain if you don't ground the static while you sleep. Put it under your pillow. Or eat it. I don't care." "Who are you?" Leo asked. "I'm the one who fixes the things you break," Ada said. She looked at Beatrice, then back to Leo. Her eyes were hard, devoid of the pity he expected. "Listen to me, pilot. You want to get out of here? You want to know who shot you down?" Leo stiffened. "You know." "I know enough," Ada said. She retreated back into the shadows. "But listen close. If you want revenge, don't die early. The dead don't get paid." She vanished into the labyrinth of the alleyway before Beatrice could interrogate her. "You know this human," Beatrice demanded. "Never saw her before in my life," Leo said, pocketing the wire coil. "Friendly local, I guess," Beatrice snorted. "There are no friendly locals here. Only survivors." They reached Beatrice's den as the sun began to set. It was a structure built into the side of a cliff overlooking the valley. It was Spartan functional. A heavy iron door, a main room with a fire pit and piles of furs. Beatrice shoved him inside and slammed the door. The sound of the lock engaging was heavy and final. "That corner is yours," she said, pointing to a patch of bare stone near the ventilation grate. "Stay there." She walked to the far side of the room and began to unbuckle her armor. The heavy plates clattered to the floor, revealing a tunic of leather underneath. She looked exhausted. The posture of the invincible champion slumped. Leo sat in his corner, his back against the cold stone. He pulled the coil of wire from his pocket and twisted it in his fingers. Outside, the wind picked up. The night sky of Fenrir Vale wasn't black. It was a swirling, bruised purple. The black aurora began to dance, shimmering like a curtain of oil on water. Leo watched Beatrice. She was standing by the window, staring out at the aurora. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She hated him. He could feel it radiating off her like heat. He was a burden, a political trap, a weakness. But as the aurora flared, casting long, twisting shadows across the room, Leo looked at his own hand. The blue lines of the howl mark were faint now, pulsing in time with the lights outside. He thought about the Oathfang. He thought about the reflex that had saved his life and ruined hers. "Beatrice," he said softly. She didn't turn. "Sleep, human, before I change my mind about eating you." Leo leaned his head back. He was trapped on a hostile world, surrounded by monsters with a target on his back and a mystery buried under the streets. He closed his eyes, clutching the wire Ada had given him. He wasn't going to die here. He was going to find out who shot him down. He was going to find out why there was a starship hull buried under a werewolf city. And he was going to figure out why, when he caught that dagger, the giant wolf woman looked more afraid of living than she did of dying. The black aurora pulsed again, a silent, rhythmic breathing that seemed to whisper, "Begin, begin, begin." Leo let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The game was rigged. The board was alien, and he was playing with a hand he didn't understand. But he was a pilot, and pilots didn't need to know the odds. They just needed to know where the horizon was. "Good night, Beatrice," he whispered. The only answer was the low, dangerous rumble of the wind and the crackle of the fire as the Luporan champion stared into the dark, wondering how a single second had managed to rewrite the destiny of her entire pack. The timeline had shifted. The countdown had begun. The den did not smell like home. It smelled like ozone-wet fur and the metallic tang of dried blood. Leo lay on the pile of furs Beatrice had designated as his corner, shivering uncontrollably. The fever was not just biological. It was vibrational. Every time the wind outside howled against the stone cliffs of Fenrir Vale, a sympathetic resonance rattled through his skull, spiking the temperature of his blood. The howl mark on his right palm throbbed with a dull, blue light, pulsing in time with the headache that was currently trying to split his cranium in two. He fumbled with the clasp of his flight suit, dragging the emergency medical kit from his belt. His fingers felt thick and unresponsive like sausages wrapped in cotton wool. Beatrice sat across the fire pit, sharpening the edge of her sword with a whetstone. Shk, shk, shk. The rhythm was maddeningly precise. She had not looked at him for 2 hours. To her, he was likely just a piece of meat that was spoiling faster than expected. "Stop shaking," she said, not looking up. "The noise is annoying." "Sorry," Leo muttered, his teeth chattering. "I will try to die more quietly." Beatrice paused in her sharpening. She turned her massive head toward him, the firelight catching the amber bioluminescence in her eyes. "If you die in my den, I have to drag your carcass to the edge of the ravine. It is a long walk. Do not inconvenience me." "You are all heart, Beatrice," Leo managed to say. He finally popped the seal on the medkit. A small hiss of pressurized gas escaped. He pulled out a dermal regenerator. It was a sleek white device, contrasting sharply with the primitive rough-hewn stone of the cave. Leo pressed it against the jagged cut on his ribs, a souvenir from the crash he was still trying to piece together. "What is that?" Beatrice asked. Her voice held a mixture of suspicion and mandated curiosity. "Biofoam," Leo explained, gritting his teeth as the machine whirred. "It uses nanites to weave synthetic tissue into the wound. Stops infection. Knits the skin." A beam of soft blue light scanned the injury, and the device emitted a series of cheerful chirps that sounded absurdly out of place in the gloomy den. Beatrice watched her ears flattened against her skull. To her, this was not medicine. It was witchcraft. It was a cheat code for mortality. "False flesh," she grumbled, returning to her sword. "You humans are so afraid of scars you paste over them with lies." "I am a pilot," Leo said, the pain subsiding enough for him to breathe deeply. "I am used to living inside a machine that is constantly trying to explode. You learn to patch things up fast." Beatrice looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You live inside a metal shell, and now you paste your skin with metal bugs. Is there anything real about you, Skyfaller?" Leo managed a weak grin. "My charm is 100% organic." Beatrice snorted a sound, like a compressor stalling. "Then you are doomed. Charm does not stop a spear." "Maybe," Leo said, sitting up and testing his side. The fever was still there, buzzing in his ears, but the structural damage was fixed. "But you said I was safe with you. Or was that just for the crowd?" "You are shield-bound," she stated, as if reciting a tedious instruction manual. "It means I cannot kill you. It means if someone else kills you while you are in my care, my honor is broken. It does not mean I have to like you. And it certainly does not mean you are safe from the planet itself." "Right," Leo said. "Speaking of the planet, why does everyone here look at me like I am a walking plague?" "Because you are," a new voice rasped. Leo jumped. Beatrice was on her feet in a blur of motion, her sword leveled at the ventilation grate near the ceiling. Ada dropped down, landing lightly on the stone floor. She dusted off her grease-stained jumpsuit and held up her hands. "Easy, champion. I am just the mechanic. Nobody kills the mechanic. Who would fix the water pumps?" Beatrice did not lower the sword. "You trespass in the den of a champion." "And you are housing a fugitive alien," Ada countered, jerking a thumb at Leo. "So I figure we are both breaking rules tonight." Ada walked over to Leo, ignoring the giant wolf woman looming over her. She pulled a small, ruggedized datapad from her pocket and shoved it into Leo's hands. "Look at the frequency analysis," Ada said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I pulled this from the atmospheric sensors before the council locked the grid." Leo looked at the screen. It was a mess of static and sine waves, but one line stood out, a clean artificial signal cutting through the noise. "A carrier wave," Leo said, his pilot instincts kicking in. "Someone is hailing the planet." "Not hailing," Ada corrected. "Pinging, like a sonar. They are looking for something." "The rescue team," Leo said, hope rising in his chest. "They are looking for me." Ada laughed, a dry hacking sound. "Oh, sweet summer child. Look at the energy signature. That is not a search and rescue transponder. That is a deep core mining scanner. And look at the arrival time." Leo squinted at the numbers. "ETA 48 hours. "They are not coming to save you, Leo," Ada said, her eyes grim. "They are coming to harvest. This planet produces the Howl Wave. It is a unique bioacoustic energy source. The corporate fleets have been trying to map this sector for decades. Your crash." "It was just the dinner bell," Beatrice growled low in her throat. "Harvest. They come to steal the voice of the ancestors." "They come to strip mine it," Ada said, turning to the Luporan. And if they find a human pilot who knows too much, and a native population that gets in the way, well, industrial accidents happen. Leo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The rescue he had been praying for was actually an execution squad. 48 hours, he repeated. That is 2 days. Give or take, Ada said. If you are still here when they land, you are dead. If you try to leave atmosphere without a proper shield key, the interference fries your ship. You are stuck, pilot. Unless you figure out who is really pulling the strings down here. Harker, Beatrice said, the name dripping with venom. Harker is just the local muscle, Ada said. He wants power. He does not know what is coming from the sky. He thinks he can use the off-worlders to cement his rule. He is selling you out, Beatrice. He is going to give them the veil in exchange for a crown. Suddenly, a heavy pounding on the iron door echoed through the cave. Open! A guard's voice boomed. By order of the council, Ada's eyes went wide. I was never here. She scrambled up the wall, disappearing into the ventilation shaft with the agility of a spider. Beatrice waited a beat, then sheathed her sword and unbarred the door. 3 guards stood there, flanked by a council herald. The herald looked nervous, clutching a scroll of skin parchment. Beatrice of the Iron Fur, the herald stammered. The council demands the presence of the shield-bound. The gathered packs require proof that the omen is functional. He is recovering, Beatrice said, blocking the doorway with her body. He must hunt, the herald said. The moon hunt begins at moonrise. Harker has petitioned that the shield-bound join the scouting party, to prove he is worthy of the pack's resources. Beatrice stiffened. He is human. He has no night eyes. He has no claws. Sending him on a moon hunt is murder. It is the law, the herald squeaked, taking a step back. If he cannot keep pace, he is weak. If he is weak, he is a burden. If he is a burden, the shield is void. Beatrice looked back at Leo. Her face was a mask of conflict. She knew it was a trap. Everyone knew it was a trap. But refusing a challenge from the council would strip her of her rank and likely get them both killed on the spot. Leo stood up. The fever was still burning, but the biofoam had dulled the sharp pain in his side to a manageable throb. He walked to the door, standing beside Beatrice. He barely came up to her shoulder. I will go, Leo said. Beatrice looked down at him. You will die. I am a pilot, Leo said, repeating his mantra. I navigate hazardous environments for a living. Besides, if I stay here, I am just waiting for the sky to fall. I would rather see what is out there. The herald looked relieved. Excellent. The party gathers at the north gate in 1 hour. As the guards left, Beatrice grabbed Leo by the shoulder. Do you understand what you have done? The moon hunt is not a stroll. We hunt the shade-stalkers. They are blind, but they hear your heartbeat from 300 yards away. And Harker will be leading the party. I know, Leo said. Harker wants an accident. If I die out there, it is just the wilderness claiming the weak. No blood on his hands. No broken laws. And yet you agreed, Beatrice said. I need to see the terrain, Leo said. Ada said the off-worlders are coming in 48 hours. I need to know where they might land. And I need to know if Harker is communicating with them. Beatrice stared at him for a long moment. You are either very brave or very stupid. My flight instructor used to say they are the same thing, Leo replied. The north gate opened onto a landscape that looked like the surface of a bruised moon. The ground was jagged obsidian and gray dust. The vegetation was sparse, twisted black bark trees that looked like agony frozen in time. The scouting party consisted of 12 Luporan. Harker was at the front, his armor polished to a gleam that seemed impractical for stealth. Beatrice walked near the rear, keeping Leo close. There was one other notable member, Riven. He was young for a scout, his fur still patchy, in places his movements eager and unrefined. He kept glancing at Leo with wide, curious eyes. Is it true you fly among the stars? Riven whispered, when the column paused to check the wind. Riven, Beatrice hissed. Silence on the hunt. It is okay, Leo whispered back. Yes, I fly. The stars look different from up there. Do you eat them? Riven asked. Leo blinked. Eat the stars. The elder says stars are the eyes of dead gods. If you fly among them, do you eat them to gain their sight? Leo smiled. No, we just navigate by them. We leave the gods alone. Harker drifted back from the front of the line. Talking destroys the hunt, he said smoothly. But perhaps the human wishes to alert the prey. It would speed up the inevitable. Just answering questions, Leo said. Save your breath for running, Harker said. He signaled the group. We enter the Razor Canyon, Formation Delta. Beatrice, take the flank. Keep the baggage secure. Beatrice bristled, but moved to the left flank. Leo followed. The canyon was a nightmare of acoustics. The wind whistled through natural flutes in the rock, creating a constant dissonance hum. Leo realized instantly why this place was dangerous. The howl wave was amplified here. The interference in his head grew louder, a buzzing swarm of bees. He watched the Leporin. They were moving strangely. They weren't looking with their eyes. They were swiveling their ears, tilting their heads. They were using the howl wave. It was a natural sonar for them, bouncing off the canyon walls, and the creatures hiding within. But Leo saw something they didn't. He pulled the coil of wire Ada had given him from his pocket. He had rigged it into a crude loop antenna attached to the vibration sensor in his wrist comp. It wasn't much, but it converted the audio interference into a visual waveform on his small screen. The waveform was distorted. Beatrice, Leo whispered. The signal is bouncing wrong. There is a distortion field ahead. Quiet, she commanded, her ears twitching. I hear movement. 300 yards. Low to the ground. No, Leo said, checking the screen. That is an echo. The source is up. It is high. Shade stalkers do not climb, Beatrice said dismissively. They are heavy. They ambush from the ground. The sensor says otherwise, Leo insisted. Suddenly, Harker barked a command. Flank right, drive them into the narrows. It was a bad call. Leo saw it on the screen immediately. The narrows was where the distortion was strongest. It was a blind spot. He is hurting us, Leo said. Beatrice, he is sending us into a trap. Before Beatrice could respond, the attack began. It didn't come from the ground. It came from the canyon walls. Creatures that looked like hybrids of spiders and bats detached themselves from the shadows. They were the shade stalkers, but they weren't heavy. They were terrifyingly fast. They shrieked a sound that tore through the howl wave interference, like a physical blow. Ambush! Riven screamed. The formation broke. The Leporin were disoriented. Their natural radar was failing them because the acoustic properties of the canyon were shifting, bouncing the sound in impossible directions. They were slashing at empty air, missing targets that their ears told them were 3 feet to the left. Harker had vanished. He had slipped away into a crevice the moment the attack started. A shade stalker dropped directly in front of Leo. It had no eyes, just a gaping maw of sensory pits and teeth. It reared up, ready to strike. Beatrice roared, slamming her shoulder into the beast. She drove her sword into its carapace, but 2 more dropped from the rocks above, pinning her shield arm. Run, Leo! She shouted. Leo didn't run. He looked at his screen, the distortion. It was caused by the wind rushing through a specific cluster of hollow spires above them. The creatures were using the noise to cloak their movements. He needed to change the sound. Leo unspooled the copper wire. He spotted a heavy, loose boulder perched precariously on a ledge 10 feet up. He wasn't strong enough to fight a monster, but he was a pilot. He understood leverage and trajectory. He sprinted toward the cliff face, jumping over a thrashing tail. He threw the weighted end of the wire. It wrapped around a stalagmite near the boulder. Riven! Leo shouted. The wire pull. Riven, who was backed against a wall by a smaller stalker, saw the human pointing. The young wolf understood instantly. He lunged, grabbing the wire with his teeth and jerking his head back with all his strength. The wire pulled tight. The stalagmite snapped. The boulder shifted, rolled, and crashed down into the cluster of hollow spires. Crack, boom. The sound was explosive. It shattered the natural wind flutes. The acoustic environment changed instantly. The confusing, high-pitched whistling stopped, replaced by the dull echo of falling rock. The shade-stalkers shrieked in confusion. Their sonic camouflage was gone. "Now," Leo yelled. "They are blind." The Luporans sensed the change. The fog in their hearing lifted. Suddenly, they could pinpoint the enemies. Beatrice, freed from the sensory confusion, moved like a whirlwind. She decapitated the beast pinning her, then spun to gut the one threatening Riven. The tide turned in 30 seconds. Without their acoustic advantage, the Shadestalkers were just meat. The pack tore through them with efficient, brutal precision. Silence returned to the canyon, save for the heavy breathing of the wolves. Harker emerged from the shadows, his sword clean. He looked at the carnage, then at Leo, who was leaning against a rock, winding his wire back up. "An impressive recovery," Harker said, his voice tight. "But reckless. You endangered the pack by disturbing the rock." "He saved us," Riven blurted out. The young scout stepped forward, his chest heaving. "We were blind, Warlord. The echoes were wrong. He fixed the sound." The other hunters murmured in agreement. They looked at Leo not with hatred, but with a new expression: confusion, calculation, respect. Beatrice stepped between Harker and Leo. She was covered in blue ichor, her silver fur matted. She looked terrifying. "The human stands," Beatrice said. "The hunt is finished. We return." Harker's eyes flicked to Beatrice. "He altered the terrain. That is a violation of the natural way." "He killed the prey and saved a pack brother," Beatrice snarled. "If that is a violation, then the law is broken. Do you wish to challenge my interpretation here, Harker, with the scent of your cowardice still fresh in the air?" It was a direct accusation. Harker's hand twitched toward his sword. The air grew heavy. Then Harker smiled. A thin, bloodless smile. "You are emotional, Beatrice. It compromises your judgment. But very well. We return." The walk back was different. Leo was no longer at the rear. Riven walked beside him. "How did you know?" Riven asked quietly. "About the rocks. Physics," Leo said. "Sound is just waves. If the waves are messy, you clean them up." "You fight with your head," Riven said, sounding impressed. "It is strange, but useful." Leo felt a gaze boring into him. He looked up to see Beatrice watching him. She wasn't scowling. She looked thoughtful, and that terrified him more than the anger. Anger was easy to deflect. Curiosity required answers he didn't want to give. When they returned to the den, the sun was rising. The light filtered through the ventilation grate, painting stripes across the stone floor. Beatrice closed the heavy door and locked it. She didn't take off her armor immediately. She stood in the center of the room, staring at the fire pit. "You should not have done that," she said finally. "Saved Riven?" Leo asked, collapsing onto his furs. "I thought preserving the pack was rule number 1. "You made an enemy of Harker tonight," Beatrice said. "Truly. Before you were a nuisance. Now you are a threat. You showed the young ones that there is a way to fight that does not involve his command. He will not forgive that." "He tried to kill us, Beatrice," Leo said, his voice hardening. "He led us into that blind spot on purpose. He knew the stalkers were there. He wanted me dead, and he didn't care if Riven or you got chewed up in the process." Beatrice turned to him. "I know." The admission hung in the air. "You know?" Leo asked. "And you still follow him?" "He is the warlord," Beatrice said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "Order keeps us alive. If we fight amongst ourselves, the planet kills us. That is the way it has always been. The way it has always been is about to change, Leo said. The off-worlders are coming in 40 hours now. Harker is going to sell you out. You saw how he disappeared during the fight. He is not a leader, Beatrice. He is a broker. Beatrice walked over to him. She knelt down, her face level with his. She reached out and touched the bandage on his side. Her hand was large, her claws sharp enough to disembowel him with a twitch, but her touch was surprisingly gentle. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You are a sky human. You want to leave. Why save Riven? Why warn me?" "Because," Leo said, looking into her amber eyes. "I don't like bullies. And I realize something out there." "What?" "You are not the monsters," Leo said. "You are just people trying to survive on a rock that hates you. I respect that." Beatrice stared at him. The silence stretched thick and charged. Suddenly, Leo felt a sharp heat in his right hand. He hissed, pulling his hand from behind his back. The howl mark was glowing. But it wasn't the dull blue pulse of the fever. It was a bright, searing white. Beatrice gasped and pulled her hand back. As she moved away, the light on Leo's palm faded back to blue. She moved closer again. The light flared white. They both stared at the hand. "It reacts to you," Leo whispered. Beatrice looked at her own chest. Under the leather of her tunic, a faint glow was visible, pulsing in time with Leo's hand. "This is not possible," she whispered. "The shield bond is a legal term. It is words. It is not this." "It is resonance," Leo said, his mind racing. "The howl wave. It connects things. When I caught the fang, when the wave hit, it didn't just mark me. It paired us." Beatrice stood up abruptly, backing away until her back hit the stone wall. "No, I am champion. I belong to the pack. I cannot be bound to an alien." "I don't think we have a choice," Leo said, looking at his hand. "Ada said the off-worlders are looking for a compatible subject. I think we just found out what that means. We tell no one," Beatrice commanded, her voice shaking slightly. "If Harker knows this, if the council knows, they will vivisect us," Leo finished. "We tell no one," she repeated. "Agreed." Leo watched her. She looked frightened for the first time, not of death, but of something she couldn't control. 40 hours, Beatrice," Leo said softly. "We have 40 hours to figure out how to stop an invasion, expose a traitor, and break a bond that might be the only thing keeping us alive." Beatrice looked at him, and for a fleeting second, the wall of the champion crumbled entirely. He saw just a woman, tired and cornered. "Get some sleep, Leo," she said, using his name without the sneer for the first time. "Tomorrow we do not hunt beasts. We hunt the truth." She turned away to tend to the fire, but Leo saw her hand linger over her heart, right where the resonance had glowed. The countdown in his head ticked down. The den was warm, but the chill of the coming storm was already seeping through the stone. They were in the eye of the hurricane, and the walls were closing in. The challenge did not come with a shout. It arrived with the scraping of stone against stone, a sound that grated on the teeth and settled deep in the bones. The morning after the moon hunt, the atmosphere in the central plaza of the Luporan settlement was thick enough to choke on. The black aurora was active even in the daylight, casting long, twisting shadows that danced like oil on the surface of water. The static interference, the howl wave, was a low-level headache that sat behind Leo's eyes, a constant reminder that the planet itself was screaming. Leo stood beside Beatrice near the entrance to the council hall. He felt the eyes of the pack on him. Yesterday, he had been an omen, a piece of sky trash to be executed. Today, he was an anomaly. He was the small, furless thing that had turned the acoustics of a canyon into a weapon and saved a scout. But respect in Fenrir Vale was a volatile element. It could be converted into currency, or it could explode. Harker stood in the center of the plaza. He had cleaned the blood of the Shadestalkers from his armor, but he wore the stains of his bruised ego like a cloak. He did not look at Leo. He looked at the crowd, his voice projecting with the practiced cadence of a politician. "The pack survives because the pack is pure," Harker announced, his voice booming. "We trust the claw, the fang, and the instinct given to us by the ancestors. Yesterday we saw a corruption of that way." He turned slowly, pointing a clawed finger at Beatrice. "The champion allows her pet to mock our traditions," Harker continued. "He alters the land. He uses trickery where a warrior uses strength. And because of this, the ancestors are restless. Can you not hear the howl wave growing louder? It is the anger of the veil." A murmur went through the crowd. It was easy to blame the headache-inducing noise on the outsider. "I demand the right of Fang," Harker roared. The crowd went silent. Beatrice stiffened beside Leo, her muscles coiling, as if she were about to spring. "The right of Fang," Harker repeated, turning his gaze finally to Leo. "A duel within the blood circle. No interference. No shielding. To cleanse the shame of the hunt and prove who is truly worthy to walk this soil." "He is human," Beatrice shouted, stepping forward. "He is half your weight and has no natural weapons. This is not a duel, Harker. It is a slaughter." "Then admit he is weak," Harker countered smoothly. "Admit that your shield-bound is a liability. Renounce him, break the bond, and let the law take its course. Or," he smiled, a cold baring of teeth, "let him fight." "I accept," Leo said. Beatrice spun around her tail, knocking over a ceremonial urn. "You will be silent." "I accept," Leo repeated louder this time. He stepped out from behind Beatrice. He looked ridiculous standing there in his battered flight suit, surrounded by 8-foot-tall predators, but his voice was steady. "If I win, the subject is dropped. If I lose, well, you won't have to worry about my jokes anymore." Harker laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "Tomorrow at dawn. The circle waits." "You are an idiot." Beatrice paced the length of the den, her claws clicking rhythmically on the stone floor. "A suicidal, arrogant, soft-skinned idiot." Leo sat on his pile of furs, tinkering with the wrist comp that was still struggling to pierce the jamming signal. "I have been called worse by better pilots," he said, not looking up. "You do not understand," Beatrice growled, stopping in front of him and blocking the light from the fire. "Harker is a warlord. He has killed challengers before the sun fully rose. He will not just kill you. He will take you apart piece by piece to show the pack that technology is frail." "I know," Leo said. "Then why?" Beatrice demanded, crouching down so her face was level with his. "We could have found a way. I could have invoked the champion's veto. I could have challenged him in your place. And then I would be your debt forever," Leo said quietly. He put the wrist comp down and met her gaze. "Listen to me, Beatrice. Since I crashed here, I have been dragged, threatened, leashed, and treated like luggage. I am done being baggage." "You are alive baggage," she countered. "Tomorrow you will be dead baggage." "Not if I win." "You cannot win," Beatrice roared, the sound vibrating in Leo's chest. "You cannot outmuscle a Luperin. Physics is not on your side." "Physics is always on my side," Leo replied. "It is the only thing I trust." He stood up and walked to the entrance of the den. The wind was howling outside. "Besides, if I run or if you fight for me, Harker wins anyway. He proves I am weak. He proves you are compromised. He takes control of the council. And when the off-worlders land—" "The off-worlders," Beatrice spat. "They are a ghost story. They are real." A raspy voice came from the shadows. Ada dropped from the ventilation shaft again, landing with a heavy thud. She looked more disheveled than usual. Her mechanic's goggles were askew, and her hands were covered in silver grease. "I tapped the long-range vibration sensors on the northern ridge," Ada said, walking straight to the water basin and dunking her head in. She came up sputtering. The mining ship. It is accelerating. They are not waiting for a standard orbital insertion. They are doing a combat drop. Leo felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. When? 30 hours, Ada said. Maybe less. They are burning hard. They want to be on the ground before the council realizes what is happening. 30 hours, Leo repeated. That means they land tomorrow afternoon. Exactly, Ada said, wiping her face with a greasy rag. Harker knows something. He pushed up the duel. He wants the pack distracted at dawn so the skies are clear for his new friends to land by midday. He cleans house, the miners land, he hands over the rights to the Howl Wave, and he gets to be king of the ashes. Beatrice looked from Ada to Leo. The reality of the situation was sinking in. It wasn't just a duel. It was a coup. If I run, Leo said to Beatrice, Harker takes over tomorrow. He will hand you and your people over to the corporation as labor. I have seen it happen on the Outer Rim. They don't make treaties, Beatrice. They make assets. Beatrice closed her eyes. She let out a long, shuddering breath. When she opened them, the amber light was steady. Then you cannot just survive, she said. You have to humiliate him. That is the plan, Leo said. But I am going to need help. I need to know the arena better than he does. The blood circle is just stone and sand, Beatrice said. No, Leo said, a small smile touching his lips. Nothing is ever just stone. Ada, do you still have that canister of reflective dust? Ada grinned, showing a missing tooth. I have got industrial grade. Why, I am going to need to make the ground a little less predictable. The preparations began under the cover of the artificial night. The Howl Wave interference was always worse after dark, a screaming static that kept most Luporan in their dens, nursing migraines. Leo used this to his advantage. He, Beatrice, Ada, and Riven, who had snuck out of the barracks, stood in the empty blood circle. The arena was ghostly silent, the high walls blocking the wind. Okay, Leo whispered. Riven, I need you to walk the perimeter. Tell me where the stone feels dead, where the vibrations don't bounce back. Riven nodded eagerly. Since the canyon, the young wolf looked at Leo with a mix of awe and confusion. I understand. Like testing the ice on a river. Exactly, Leo said. Ada, I need the dust applied to the north quadrant, but not on the surface. Dig it in. I want it to mix with the sand so it only becomes slippery when pressure is applied. Pressure-activated lubricant, Ada chuckled. Nasty. I like it. Leo turned to the center of the ring. He took a device from his belt, a makeshift sonic mapper he had cobbled together from his survival kit and parts of Ada's toaster. He pressed it to the ground. Thump, thump, thump. What are you looking for? Beatrice asked, standing guard by the gate. Anomalies, Leo muttered. The elder said the circle is ancient, but the acoustics are too perfect. It focuses sound into the center. That is not natural erosion. That is engineering. He moved toward the southern edge, near where Harker usually started his bouts. He triggered the thumper again. Thump-clang. Leo froze. It was faint, buried under 10 feet of rock and packed earth, but he heard it. The hollow metallic ring of alloy. Here, Leo whispered. Beatrice walked over. What is it? There is something under here, Leo said. A hollow space, and it is metal. A tomb, Beatrice asked. Or a machine, Leo said. He adjusted the frequency of his scanner. The reading spiked. It is drawing power. A lot of it. The Howl Wave is strongest right here. This isn't just an arena, Beatrice. It is a lens. He looked up at her. Harker is not just challenging me to a fight. He is staging a show on top of a reactor. Can we use it? She asked. I can't access it, Leo said. Not without heavy equipment. But I can use the vibration. If I can get him to step here, he tapped the spot. And if I trigger a sonic pulse? The ground will shake, Beatrice finished. More than shake, Leo said. It will sing. And for a species that hunts by sound, that is going to be like a flashbang grenade going off in his face. It is cheating, Beatrice said. There was no judgment in her voice, only observation. It is asymmetry, Leo corrected. He has claws. I have science. Seems fair to me. They spent the next 3 hours mapping every inch of the circle. Leo memorized the wind tunnels, the spots where the sand was deep enough to drag a foot, and the precise location of the metallic echo. By the time they returned to the den, Leo's body was aching, but his mind was razor-sharp. He was not a warrior. He was a pilot, and he had just finished his pre-flight check. Inside the den, the mood shifted. The adrenaline of the planning faded, leaving behind the heavy reality of the dawn. Beatrice sat by the fire, applying a salve to a crack in the hardened skin of her palm, a minor injury from the hunt she had ignored until now. Her movements were stiff. "Let me do that," Leo said. "It is nothing," she muttered, pulling her hand away. "You have a tremor in your thumb," Leo said gently. "If you don't treat the nerve, it will affect your grip. You don't want to drop your sword when the miners land." Beatrice hesitated, then slowly extended her hand. Leo took it. His hand was dwarfed by hers. Her skin was rough, like warm leather, and the pads of her fingers were calloused from years of wielding steel. He applied the biogel from his kit, his thumb working the medicine into the fissure. The silence in the cave was intimate, heavy with things unsaid. "You have good hands," Beatrice said softly. "For a killer." Leo paused. "I am not a killer, Beatrice." "Tomorrow you must be," she said. "If you hesitate, Harker will open your throat. There is no mercy in the circle." "I don't want to kill him," Leo said. "I want to break him." "In my world, that is the same thing," she replied. She looked at him, her amber eyes searching his face. "Why did you really come to Fenrir Vale, Leo, the truth?" Leo continued to massage her hand, focusing on the rhythm. "I was piloting a relief transport, food medical supplies for the Outer Reach colonies. We were supposed to bypass this system, but my navigation computer glitched. It locked onto a signal from the surface. This surface." He looked up. "Someone lured me here, Beatrice. They overrode my controls and brought me down. And when I crashed, I wasn't just found by the pack. I was heralded. Orin knew I was coming. Harker knew." "You think it was arranged?" Beatrice whispered. "I think I am a piece on a board I can't see," Leo said. "And I hate being used." Beatrice pulled her hand back gently. She looked at her palm, then at him. "I know the feeling. To be the champion is to be a symbol. I fight because they tell me to fight. I hate because they tell me to hate. Sometimes," she looked away. "Sometimes I wonder if I would know who I was if I stopped fighting." "You are the woman who didn't kill me when she had the chance," Leo said. "That is a start." Beatrice looked at him, and for a moment the distance between them, species culture size, vanished. There was just the shared exhaustion of two people, tired of being pawns. "Do not die, Leo," she said fiercely. "I do not want to be alone with them again." "I will try to keep that on my schedule," Leo said, forcing a lightness he didn't feel. "Do not mock me," she warned, but there was no heat in it. "And do not expect me to mourn you if you fail." "Wouldn't dream of it." Leo moved to his corner. He lay down, but sleep was a distant concept. Later that night, or perhaps early morning, Leo decided to visit Elder Orin. He needed to understand the rules, not the written ones, but the old ones. The Elder's dwelling was a circular hut, filled with smoke and hanging bone charms. Orin sat in the center, looking like a pile of discarded rags until his eyes opened. "The small one seeks wisdom before the end," Orin rasped. "I seek clarity," Leo said, standing in the doorway. "The Oathfang. You said it binds the life of the thrower to the catcher. It does. Does it bind anything else? Leo asked. Orin chuckled a sound, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. The fang is not a weapon, Skyfaller. It is a tooth of the first wolf. It does not just cut flesh. It cuts intent. The elder leaned forward. When Beatrice threw the fang, she threw her will. She threw her desire to end you. You caught it. You caught her will. Now she cannot act against you without acting against herself. But what about me? Leo asked. I feel something. The mark on my hand. You caught the will, Orin said mysteriously. But you did not return it. You kept it. Now you carry the weight of her oath. You are the anchor. Orin pointed a bony finger at Leo's chest. Be careful, pilot. If you use the bond to pull her, she will come. But if you pull too hard, you will find that you are not the one holding the leash. You are the one tied to the stake. I am not trying to control her, Leo said. Are you? Orin asked. You need her to survive. You need her pack to fight your war. Is that not control? Is that not what Harker does? The question hung in the smoky air. I am giving her a choice, Leo said firmly. Then ensure she has a world left to choose in, Orin said, closing his eyes. Go. The dawn approaches, and the stones are hungry. Leo returned to the den, his mind racing. He lay down on the furs, closing his eyes, trying to visualize the fight. Step left, trigger the dust, roll right, hit the resonance point. He drifted into a shallow, uneasy sleep. The dream came instantly. He was back in the cockpit. The alarms were screaming, bathing the console in red light. The G-force was crushing his chest. Mayday, mayday. This is Transport Alpha 9. I have lost navigational control. I am being pulled in. Static filled the headset. Then a voice cut through. It was clear, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. Steady, Alpha 9. You are right on course. Leo froze in the dream. He knew that voice. It wasn't an alien warlord. It wasn't a mining drone AI. Commander, Leo shouted in the dream. Commander Vance, what are you doing? Override the descent. The package must be delivered, Leo, the voice said, sounding regretful but firm. The catalyst is required. You are doing a great service for the company. Just hold on. It will be over soon. Vance, Leo screamed as the viewport filled with the black and purple swirls of Fenrir Vale. The ground rushed up. The impact was coming. Leo woke up with a gasp, sitting bolt upright. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He was drenched in cold sweat. It wasn't a random crash. It wasn't just a lure. It was Vance, his flight commander, the man who had signed his flight logs for 3 years, the man who had taught him how to stabilize a drift. The package must be delivered. Leo looked at his hands. They were shaking. He wasn't the pilot. He was the package. He was the delivery. And Beatrice, she was the recipient. He looked across the dying fire. Beatrice was asleep, her breathing deep and rhythmic. She looked peaceful, her guard finally down. A wave of nausea hit him. They had sent him here to be caught. They knew about the Oathfang. They knew about the shield-bound laws. They needed a human to be bound to a Luporan champion. Why? To bridge the gap, to unlock the Howl Wave. He didn't know the why yet, but he knew the who, and he knew that if he told Beatrice now that his own people, his own commander, had sold him to be a sacrificial lamb in her arena, it would break her. She was barely holding on to her trust in him. If she knew he was a manufactured weapon, she might just let Harker kill him. Leo clenched his fist. The blue light of the howl mark flickered faintly. He would not tell her. Not yet. He would carry the lie a little longer. He would win the duel. He would stop the invasion. And then he would find Vance, and he would ask him exactly how much a human soul was worth in the corporate ledger. The first light of dawn began to bleed through the ventilation grate. It was gray and cold. "Time to fly," Leo whispered to the empty room. He stood up, checked his boots, and strapped the modified wrist comp to his arm. He didn't look back at the sleeping champion. He walked out of the heavy iron door, stepping into the chill of the morning to meet the man who wanted him dead armed, with nothing but a pocket full of dust and a head full of ghosts. The blood circle awaited, and underneath it, the machine began to hum. The dawn over Fenrir Vale did not break. It bruised. The sky turned a deep hematoma purple, streaked with the lingering, restless ribbons of the black aurora. The light that filtered down into the blood circle was cold and unforgiving, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe on the sand. The arena was full. It was not just a gathering. It was a geological event. Thousands of Luporan crowded the tiered stone benches, their heavy fur absorbing the sound, creating a suffocating, hushed atmosphere. The air smelled of whetstone ozone and the copper tang of anticipation. Leo stood in the preparation tunnel. The darkness here was absolute, save for the blinking red light on his wrist comp. "Heart rate is 120, Beatrice said. She was standing behind him, invisible in the gloom, but her presence was a wall of heat. "Just warming up the engine," Leo lied. His voice sounded thin to his own ears. He adjusted the straps of his flight suit. It was torn, stained with grease, and dried blood, a pathetic contrast to the ceremonial armor awaiting him outside. "Leo," Beatrice said. Her voice was low, stripped of its usual command. "Harker will aim for the legs first. He wants you mobile enough to feel pain, but slow enough to be a toy. Do not let him anchor you." "I know the flight plan, Beatrice," Leo said. He turned to face the darkness where she stood. "If I don't walk out of there, check the nav logs on my ship. If there is anything left of it, find out who signed the launch order." "You will check them yourself," she growled. "Move! The sun hits the center stone." The heavy iron grate in front of him groaned and lifted. Leo stepped out. The noise hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't a cheer. It was a rhythmic stomping of feet. Thud, thud, thud. It vibrated through the soles of his boots, shaking his teeth. Across the circle, 70 yards away, the northern gate opened. Harker emerged. He was magnificent in the most terrifying way possible. He wore ceremonial armor made of polished chitin and silver weave, but his arms and legs were bare, showing the corded muscle moving under his russet fur. He held a pair of short, curved blades, not the oath fang, but combat rippers. He raised his arms and the crowd roared, a sound that tore at the throat of the sky. Leo walked to the center. He looked small. He looked fragile. He looked like a soft thing that had wandered into a thresher. "Look at it," a voice jeered from the front row. "The meatwalks." Leo ignored them. He was breathing in a specific rhythm, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It was the anti-G lock breathing technique. He wasn't on the ground. He was in a cockpit. The arena was just a hostility zone. The wind was just turbulence. Harker was just a bogey on his 6. Elder Orin stood on the dais, his white robes flapping in the wind. "The right of Fang is invoked," Orin shouted. "Blood for honor. Life for truth. The circle is sealed." Harker didn't wait for a signal. He launched. For a creature that weighed nearly 300 pounds, Harker moved with the speed of a strike fighter. He closed the 70-yard gap in seconds, a blur of fur and steel. Leo didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his eyes locked on Harker's center of mass. The crowd screamed, expecting the human to be bisected instantly. 10 feet, 5 feet. Harker leaped, bringing both blades down in a scissor motion that would have taken Leo's head off. Leo dropped. He didn't duck. He collapsed, his center of gravity sliding forward on his knees. He triggered the friction pads on his gloves, grabbing the sand and pulling himself under Harker's leap. The air, displaced by Harker's passing, was a sudden gust that ruffled Leo's hair. Harker landed, spun, and slashed backward. Leo was already gone. He had rolled to the left, scrambling to his feet near the eastern wall. Slippery little rat, Harker hissed, turning to face him. The warlord was smiling. You think running is fighting? I am checking the aerodynamics, Leo called out. His voice was steady, amplified by the acoustic curve of the wall he was standing near. You are generating a lot of drag, Harker. Need to streamline that form. The crowd laughed. It was a nervous, confused laughter. They had expected blood in the first 3 seconds. Harker roared and charged again. This time, he didn't leap. He stayed low, rushing like a battering ram. Leo ran. He ran toward the north quadrant, the area Ada had prepped the night before. He runs, the crowd chanted. Coward, coward. Harker gained on him. The warlord's stride was twice as long as Leo's. He was 3 paces behind, raising a blade to hamstring the human. Leo reached the patch of disturbed earth. He knew exactly where it was. He planted his right foot on a solid rock, pivoted, and threw his weight to the side. Harker, blinded by bloodlust, hit the patch of sand mixed with the industrial lubricant dust. It was physics. Momentum meets zero friction. Harker's feet went out from under him. He flailed his massive bulk, crashing sideways into the dirt. He slid 5 yards, plowing a furrow in the sand with his face. The crowd gasped. The sound sucked the air out of the arena. Leo didn't attack. He stopped, leaned against the wall, and checked his wrist comp. Trajectory error, Leo quipped, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. You need to check your landing gear, warlord. Harker scrambled up spitting sand. His eyes were no longer cold. They were burning with a yellow rage. He had been humiliated. A human had made him fall without even touching him. You die slowly, Harker screamed. Come and get me, Leo said. He pushed off the wall and moved toward the center of the arena. He was leading Harker to the resonance point. Up in the stands, Beatrice watched her knuckles white as she gripped the stone railing. She saw what Leo was doing. He wasn't fighting a duel. He was solving an equation. Every step was calculated. Every taunt was a variable input designed to produce a specific output, irrational anger. He is playing with fire, Riven whispered beside her. No, Beatrice said softly. He is playing with gravity, Harker learned. He approached more cautiously this time, stalking Leo. He spread his arms, cutting off the escape routes. He was herding Leo toward the center, exactly where he thought the human would be vulnerable. No more tricks, Harker growled. Now we bleed. They circled each other over the buried metallic plate. Leo could feel the subtle vibration of the machinery deep underground through the soles of his boots. The howl wave was spiking. The static in his head was getting louder, a buzzing swarm. Do you hear it, Harker? Leo asked, his voice dropping. The ancestors. They are screaming. They scream for your blood, Harker lunged. It was a feint. Leo dodged right, but Harker anticipated it. The warlord twisted mid-lunge, his tail sweeping out like a whip. It caught Leo behind the knees. Leo went down hard. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Harker was on him instantly. A heavy hand clamped around Leo's throat, pinning him to the sand. The warlord raised a ripper blade, positioning it for a plunge into Leo's chest. Physics failed. Harker sneered, his saliva dripping onto Leo's face. Leo couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in his vision. He clawed at Harker's arm, but it was like hitting a tree trunk. Not physics, Leo choked out. He reached down to his belt and pulled the pin on the small sonic pulse emitter he had rigged from the toaster parts. He jammed it into the sand right against the buried metal plate. Ping. The sound wasn't loud to the ears, but it was devastating to the ground. The pulse hit the hollow, resonant metal alloy beneath them. The vibration amplified instantly, shooting up through the sand. For a human, it was a jarring vibration. For a Luperin whose senses were attuned to the vibrations of the earth, it was like a flashbang going off inside their inner ear. Harker screamed, his eyes rolling back. He released Leo's throat, clutching his head with both hands, dropping his weapons. He staggered back, disoriented, his equilibrium shattered. Leo rolled away, gasping for air. He scrambled to his feet. The crowd was silent. They didn't understand what had happened. They just saw their warlord recoil, as if struck by an invisible hammer. "Get up!" Harker yelled at himself, shaking his head to clear the vertigo. He grabbed one of his blades and swung blindly. Leo stepped inside the swing. He didn't punch. He didn't kick. He used the momentum of Harker's clumsy swing. He grabbed Harker's wrist, stepped under the arm, and applied a joint lock that leveraged the warlord's own mass against his elbow. Crack. Harker howled, dropping the blade. But the fight wasn't over. The howl wave screamed. Suddenly, the air in the arena shimmered. The interference hit a critical peak. A mass hallucination rippled through the minds of everyone present. Leo saw the arena walls melt into the bulkheads of a burning ship. He saw fire. He saw Commander Vance laughing in the smoke. Harker saw something else. The warlord's eyes went wide with terror. He wasn't looking at Leo anymore. He was looking at a phantom behind Leo, perhaps a shadestalker, perhaps a demon of his own making. "Back!" Harker slashed at the empty air. "Get back!" Leo shook his head, fighting the vision. "It is not real. It is the wave." He saw his opening. Harker was fighting a ghost. Leo lunged. He didn't go for a weapon. He jumped onto Harker's back, wrapping his legs around the warlord's waist, and locking his arms around Harker's neck in a sleeper hold. "Sleep," Leo gritted out, squeezing with every ounce of strength he had. Harker thrashed. He slammed himself backward, crushing Leo against the stone floor. Leo cried out, feeling a rib crack, but he didn't let go. He tightened the grip. He could feel the pulse in Harker's neck. He was cutting off the blood flow to the brain. "You are nothing!" Harker gasped, clawing at Leo's arms. "I am the pilot," Leo whispered into the warlord's ear. "And you are out of fuel." Harker's struggles slowed. The oxygen deprivation combined with the sonic vertigo, and the exhaustion of fighting a ghost finally took its toll. The massive warlord sagged. He dropped to one knee, then both. Then he collapsed face forward into the sand. Leo rolled off him, heaving for breath. He lay there for a second, staring up at the purple sky. His body screamed in pain. His rib was definitely broken. But he was alive. He forced himself to stand. He picked up one of Harker's fallen ripper blades. The crowd was on its feet. They were not cheering. They were waiting. The law of the blood circle was clear. The loser dies. Beatrice held her breath. "Do it, Leo. Finish it. If you let him live, he will tear your throat out the moment he wakes up." Leo walked over to the unconscious warlord. He placed a boot on Harker's chest. He raised the blade. The sun broke through the clouds, gleaming on the steel. "Kill him!" someone shouted. "Claim the blood!" Leo looked at the blade. He looked at Harker. He looked at the frantic, bloodthirsty faces in the crowd. This was the system that had trapped Beatrice. This was the cycle. Leo's hand tightened on the hilt. He wanted to do it. The anger was there, hot and bright. This man had tried to murder him. This man was a tyrant. But then he looked at Beatrice. She was watching him with wide, terrified eyes. She wasn't afraid of Harker dying. She was afraid of Leo becoming Harker. Leo exhaled. He turned the blade in his hand. He found a fissure in the stone floor. He jammed the tip of the blade into the crack. With a grunt of effort, he kicked the hilt. Snap. The steel blade shattered. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent arena. Leo tossed the broken hilt onto Harker's chest. "No," Leo said. His voice wasn't a shout, but in the silence it carried. He looked up at the elder. "A strong pack does not need blood to prove it is strong," Leo said, his voice ringing with exhaustion and defiance. "Only the weak fear the living. I have beaten him. His life is mine, and I choose to discard it." He turned to the crowd. "He is not dead. He is just obsolete. The insult was worse than death. To be killed was honorable. To be spared because you were not worth the effort of killing. That was a dismantling of reputation that no surgery could fix. Elder Orin stared at Leo. A slow, terrifying smile spread across the old wolf's face. "The Skyfaller speaks a dangerous wisdom," Orin murmured. "But the law is satisfied. The Fang has decided." Beatrice vaulted over the railing. She landed in the sand with a heavy thud and ran to Leo. She stopped 3 feet from him. She looked at the broken blade, then at the groaning form of Harker, and finally at Leo's bruised, bloody face. She didn't hug him. That wasn't the way. She stepped forward and placed her forehead against his. It was the greeting of equals, the acceptance of a packmate. "You are a fool," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Calculated risk," Leo wheezed. "You spared him. He will hate you forever." "Let him hate me," Leo said. "I am not afraid of him anymore." "Are you?" Beatrice pulled back. She looked at Harker, who was beginning to stir, coughing up sand. She looked at the warlord she had feared for cycles. And suddenly, he just looked like a wet, angry dog in the dirt. "No," Beatrice said, surprised by the truth of it. "No, I am not," the crowd erupted. It was a chaotic mix of confusion, argument, and grudging respect. They had seen something new. They had seen a human dominate a warlord without spilling a drop of lethal blood. The narrative of the weak human was shattered. Leo swayed. The adrenaline was crashing. The pain in his rib was sharp and demanding. "Beatrice," he whispered, "I think I need to sit down." "Hold on," she said, sliding her arm under his to support him. "We are leaving." Suddenly, a high-pitched screech cut through the noise of the crowd. It was Ada. She was standing on the wall of the arena waving a flare. "Leo, Beatrice!" Ada screamed. "Incoming, look up!" The static in Leo's ear exploded into a clear, terrifying signal. The jamming had lifted for a split second, just enough for a transmission to punch through. "BZZT. This is mining vessel Goliath, initiating atmospheric entry clearing drop zone. Alpha, stand by for pacification." Leo looked up. The purple clouds above them were burning. Not with the aurora, but with fire. 3 massive contrails tore through the sky. They were jagged and orange, screaming toward the valley floor. The rescue team had arrived. And they weren't landing at the spaceport. They were dropping drop pods directly onto the city outskirts. "They are early," Leo said, his face draining of color. "Ada said 30 hours. It has been 12. "They were waiting," Beatrice realized, her eyes narrowing. "They were waiting for the duel, for us to be distracted." Harker sat up, wiping blood from his nose. He looked at the sky, and a look of twisted triumph crossed his face. "The true lords arrive," Harker rasped. "Now you will see power, little pilot." Beatrice kicked Harker in the chest, knocking him back down. "Stay down, traitor." She turned to Leo. "Can you run?" "Do I have a choice?" "No." The first drop pod hit the ground 2 miles away. The impact shook the arena walls. A mushroom cloud of dust rose into the air. The crowd panicked. The orderly ritual of the blood circle dissolved into a stampede. Luperin were climbing over each other, screaming about skyfire and demons. "To the den!" Beatrice shouted, shielding Leo from the rushing mob. "We need weapons! Real ones!" "No," Leo shouted over the noise. "We need the truth, Ada, get riven. Meet us at the crash site." "The crash site?" Beatrice asked, dragging him toward the exit tunnel. "Your ship." "My ship has the logs," Leo yelled. "If they are here to pacify the population, we need proof of what they are doing. We need to broadcast it before they jam the signal again." They sprinted into the tunnels. The sound of sonic booms hammered the roof above them. The invasion had begun. Leo's legs felt like lead. His broken rib grated with every step. But he ran. He ran because the game had changed. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about war. They burst out of the tunnel and into the alleyway leading to the den. The sky was full of landing craft now, sleek, angular, corporate gray machines that looked like sharks swimming in the air. Beatrice pulled Leo into the shadow of a building as a drone swept overhead, scanning the streets with a red laser grid. "You are safe with me," Leo whispered, breathless, repeating the words he had said the first time they met. But this time it wasn't a joke. He leaned against the wall, his hand gripping her arm. Beatrice looked down at him. The chaos of the invasion roared around them, but in the shadow, there was a moment of stillness. She looked at the human who had broken her warlord, spared his life, and was now trying to save her world with a broken rib. A low, rumbling growl started in her chest. It wasn't aggression. It was protective. It was the sound of a champion accepting her charge. "Good," Beatrice said, baring her teeth in a smile that was terrifying and beautiful. "Because I might bite anyone who tries to take you." She grabbed his hand, the one with the glowing howl mark. "Let's go hunt some ships," she said. Leo grinned, tasting blood and dust. "After you, champion." They ran into the smoke, not as pilot and prisoner, not as shieldbound and master, but as partners. The countdown was over. The war for Fenrir Vale had begun. The ship descended, not with a roar, but with a hum that vibrated in the teeth. It was a sleek, alabaster teardrop, pristine and terrifyingly clean against the bruised purple backdrop of the Fenrir Vale sky. On its hull, illuminated by soft white spotlights, was the emblem of the Interstellar Aid Coalition, a stylized hand cradling a star. To the untrained eye, it looked like salvation. To Leo, it looked like a shark wearing a smile. He crouched behind a ridge of obsidian, overlooking the valley floor, his binoculars pressed to his eyes. Beatrice was beside him, her breathing heavy, but controlled. Ada was tapping furiously on a datapad that was hardwired into Leo's wrist comp. Riven watched the rear, his ears swiveling like radar dishes. "They are not deploying medical tents," Leo whispered. "Look at the perimeter markers. Those are seismic anchors. They are locking the ship down for heavy extraction." "And the soldiers," Beatrice noted, her voice a low growl. "They do not carry food. They carry suppression rifles." "I told you," Ada hissed, not looking up from her screen. "It is a harvest. I have cracked their local comms. They are not asking for survivors. They are scanning for resonance anomalies and a primary interface subject. That is you, Beatrice." Beatrice stiffened. She looked at the massive ship, then down at her own hands. For many cycles, wolves have vanished near the canyons. Strong ones. We thought they fell to the beasts or the storms. The elders said it was the will of the mountain. "It was not the mountain," Leo said, lowering the binoculars. "It was a sample collection. They were testing to see who could handle the howl wave without their brain melting. You are the champion, because you are the strongest. That makes you the battery they have been waiting for." Beatrice looked at Leo. The realization cracked the stoic mask of the warrior. She wasn't just a leader. She was a resource, a product waiting to be shipped. "Then I should leave," Beatrice said. "If I am the target, I will draw them away from the pack. I will run to the wastes." "You won't make it 5 miles, Leo said. "They have thermal satellites. And besides, I am done running." He turned to the group. His face was streaked with dirt, his flight suit torn, but his eyes were clear. The pilot was back in the cockpit. "We are going to blind them," Leo said. "Blind a starship?" Riven asked, his voice trembling slightly. "With what stones?" "With the planet," Leo said. "The machine under the blood circle. It is a resonance amplifier. If we reverse the polarity, feed the static back into the ground, instead of the air, it creates a sensor shadow, a ghost zone. Their targeting computers won't be able to lock onto anything biological. They will be shooting at phantoms." "And how do we get to the machine?" Ada asked. It is buried under 20 feet of rock. We don't dig, Leo said. We use the access port I found during the duel, the one Harker was guarding. The team moved through the shadows of the city. The panic from the landing had driven most of the Luporan into their deep dens, leaving the streets eerily empty. As they neared the blood circle, a figure emerged from the gloom of an alleyway. It was Harker. He was limping, his armor shattered, his face swollen from the impact of the sand. He held a broken spear in one hand. Beatrice stepped forward, shielding Leo. "Stand aside, Harker. The war is here." Harker laughed, a wet, bubbling sound. "The war has been here for a long time, Beatrice. You were just too stupid to see the soldiers." He looked at the ship, hovering in the distance. "I can give you to them," Harker said, his eyes darting between them. "I know the codes. I know the landing protocols. The sky gods spoke to the elders long ago. They promised power to those who kept the herd ready. If I bring you to them, they will restore me." Leo stepped out from behind Beatrice. He walked up to Harker until he was just out of spear range. "You knew," Leo said softly. "You knew the off-worlders were farming your people. The Oathfang, the laws, the executions, it was all just population control to breed a better battery." "Order requires sacrifice," Harker sneered. "I was going to be the king of the Vale, a king with star metal and fire." "You were never a king," Leo said, his voice devoid of anger, filled only with pity. "You were just the sheepdog they paid to bite the others." Harker roared and lunged. Beatrice didn't even draw her sword. She simply stepped in, caught the spear shaft, and snapped it with a twist of her wrists. She shoved Harker backward. He stumbled, falling into a pile of refuse. "Leave him," Beatrice commanded. "He is not worth the steel." Harker lay there broken and weeping as the team ran past him toward the arena. He was no longer a villain. He was just a discarded tool, left to rust in the dark. The blood circle was vibrating. The proximity of the ship was agitating the ancient machinery underground. "Ada, get to the access panel," Leo shouted over the rising wind. "Riven, watch the perimeter. Beatrice, you are the anchor." "Anchor?" Beatrice asked. "To reverse the flow, I need to bridge the connection manually," Leo explained, pulling a bundle of cables from Ada's pack. "I need to connect the core to the atmospheric sensors. But the feedback is going to be massive. I need you to hold the physical line. If I shake loose, we fry." "I will hold," Beatrice promised. Ada pried open a hidden panel in the arena wall. Inside was a mess of crystalline circuitry and ancient alloys. She jacked in her data pad. "I am bypassing the safeties," Ada yelled. "Leo, get ready, incoming signal spike in 3, 2, 1. Leo grabbed the two main coupling cables. He jammed them into the ports on the central stone. Wham! The shockwave wasn't sound. It was pure neural pressure. Leo screamed as white-hot agony tore through his nervous system. The howl wave, amplified 1,000 times, poured into his head. He fell to his knees, his hands convulsing on the cables. "Leo!" Beatrice shouted. "Don't let go!" Leo gasped. The world dissolved into static. He was losing consciousness. The pain was too much for a human brain to handle. He was slipping. Suddenly, he felt heat. Massive, solid heat. Beatrice had wrapped her arms around him from behind. She pulled him tight against her chest armor. She didn't try to pull him away. She held him in the fire. She lowered her head until her forehead pressed against the back of his neck. "Breathe," she growled into his ear. "Share the breath. Share the pain." She triggered the bond, the shield-bound connection. Leo felt the agony split. Half of it rushed out of him and into her. He heard Beatrice gasp, her body shuddering, as she took the load. But she didn't let go. She became the ground wire for his lightning. They breathed in unison. In, out, in, out. The static cleared. The pain became a dull roar they could endure together. "Ada, now!" Leo screamed. Ada hit the execute command. A pulse of invisible energy shot out from the blood circle. It rippled through the valley, hitting the hovering ship. The effect was instant. The ship's spotlights flickered and died. The hum of its gravity engines turned into a confused grinding noise. The massive vessel listed to the side, its sensors blinded by the overwhelming resonance of the planet itself. "Target lock broken," Ada cheered. "They are flying blind." "They will land manually," Leo said, leaning back against Beatrice, exhausted. "They will send the ground team. We have to move." The battle in the fog was a nightmare of shadows. The reversed howl wave had created a thick, black mist that clung to the ground. The corporate soldiers, reliant on their thermal optics and HUDs, were helpless. Their screens showed nothing but static ghosts. But the Luporan did not need eyes. Beatrice led the charge. She moved through the mist like a wraith, her sword flashing. She didn't kill. She disabled. She smashed rifles, severed hydraulic lines on power armor, and knocked helmets off heads. Leo stayed close to her, using a scavenged pulse rifle to suppress the soldiers who tried to group up. "On your left," Leo shouted. Beatrice ducked as a plasma bolt sizzled where her head had been. She spun and kicked the shooter into a stone pillar. They fought their way to the crash site of the dropship that served as the command post. "The commander is in there," Leo said, pointing to the heavily armored shuttle. "I need to get to the console. I need to send the signal out." "I will clear the path," Beatrice said. She roared a sound that terrified the disoriented soldiers and charged the ramp. Riven and a dozen other scouts who had joined the fight followed her, a wave of fur and fury. Leo sprinted behind them. He vaulted over a barricade and burst into the shuttle's bridge. A man stood by the console, calmly deleting files. He wore a pristine officer's uniform. He didn't look like a soldier. He looked like an accountant who had just balanced a very bloody ledger. It was Commander Vance. Leo froze. The face from his dream, the face from his training. "Vance," Leo breathed. Vance turned. He smiled a sad paternal smile. "Hello, Leo. You are late. The extraction window is closing." "You shot me down," Leo said, raising the rifle. His hands were shaking. "You sent me here to die." "No, Leo," Vance said, stepping away from the console. "I sent you here to live, to adapt, to bond." Vance gestured to the viewport where the battle raged outside. "We have been trying to harvest the howl wave energy for 20 years, Vance explained calmly. "But the Luporan biology is too volatile. They burn out when we try to hook them to the collectors. We needed a stabilizer, a catalyst." He looked at Leo. "We needed a human neural pathway merged with a Luporan emotional center. We engineered your crash. We engineered the timing of the Oathfang ceremony. Elder Orin was paid handsomely to ensure the laws were interpreted correctly. We needed you to bond with the champion. You are not the pilot, Leo. You are the adapter plug." Leo felt the room spin. The revenge he had been holding onto the drive to find the bad guy was manufactured. His memories of the mission had been tweaked in the cryosleep. He was a lab rat sent to find a mate in a maze. "You made me love her," Leo asked, his voice breaking. "To make me a battery." "Love is just a chemical reaction, Leo," Vance said, reaching for a sidearm. "And a very useful one for energy transfer. Now if you will just surrender, we can extract you both and—" Leo didn't hesitate. He didn't monologue. He didn't ask for justice. He fired. The pulse bolt hit Vance in the shoulder, spinning him around and knocking the gun from his hand. Vance hit the wall and slid down, clutching his arm. Leo rushed the console. "Don't!" Vance shouted. "If you broadcast the data, the corporation will liquidate this entire sector. They will burn the planet to hide the evidence." Leo stopped. His finger hovered over the transmit key. "Let us go," Vance pleaded. "We will leave. We will find another source. Just don't expose us." Leo looked at Vance. Then he looked out the viewport. He saw Beatrice fighting. She was tired, bleeding, but she was standing between her people and the darkness. She wasn't a battery. She wasn't a resource. She was the one who had shared his breath when the world tried to crush him. "You don't get to leave," Leo said. "And you don't get to find another source." Leo tapped the console. "Ada," he yelled into the comms. "Patch the flight logs and the harvest orders into the emergency distress channel. Boost it with the howl wave. Scream it to every station in the quadrant." "With pleasure," Ada's voice crackled. "No," Vance screamed, lunging for Leo. Leo sidestepped and shoved Vance hard. The commander fell back against the bulkhead. "It is done," Leo said. On the screens, the upload bar hit 100%. The transmission didn't just go to the local authorities. It went to the news feeds. It went to the trade guilds. It went to the rival corporations. The evidence of illegal biological experimentation and sentient trafficking was now public record across 3 star systems. The effects were immediate. The massive ship above the valley began to pull up. It wasn't attacking. It was fleeing. The liability was too high. The cover was blown. They had to cut and run before the coalition fleets arrived to investigate. The ground troops, realizing their ride was leaving, threw down their weapons or scrambled for the remaining shuttles. Silence fell over the valley as the engines of the great ship faded into the upper atmosphere. Leo walked out of the shuttle. He sat down on the ramp, his legs dangling over the edge. He was exhausted. He felt hollowed out. Beatrice walked up the ramp. She was covered in soot and blue blood. She stopped in front of him. "They are leaving," she said. "They won't come back," Leo said quietly. "Too many eyes on this place now. You are safe." "Safe," Beatrice repeated the word, testing it. "The bond," Leo said, looking at his hands. "Vance said he said it was engineered. They set us up, Beatrice. The crash, the Fang. It was all a script to make us compatible. To make us functional." He looked up at her, tears stinging his eyes. "I am sorry. I didn't know I was a trap." Beatrice looked at him for a long time. The wind blew through her fur, carrying the smell of ozone and rain. "Did you engineer the way you held the wire in the canyon?" she asked. Leo blinked. "What?" "Did you engineer the dust in the arena?" she continued. "Did you engineer the moment you broke the blade instead of Harker's neck? Did you engineer the breath you shared with me in the dark?" "No," Leo said. "That was just me." Beatrice knelt down. She took his face in her large, rough hands. "The trap was set," she said firmly. "The metal men built the cage. But they did not put the heart inside it. You did that." She leaned in, her amber eyes glowing softly. "The law says we are shield-bound," she whispered. "The script says we are tools. But I am the champion, and I say what I am." She pressed her forehead to his again. "And I say I am yours, not because of the Fang, but because you are the only one who knows how to fly without wings." Leo closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. The hollowness vanished, filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with alien waves or corporate plots. "You are safe with me," Leo whispered. "I won't bite." Beatrice chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through his skull. "Good," she said. "Because I might." Above them, the clouds parted. The black aurora was gone, replaced by the true starry night of the Fenrir Vale. The howl wave had settled into a gentle hum, no longer a scream, but a song. It sounded like the planet was finally breathing. Leo looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, the corporation was scrambling, lawsuits were flying, and a new era was beginning. But right here on the metal ramp of a defeated ship, a pilot and a wolf sat together watching the sunrise of a day they had chosen for themselves. The end.